Good morning and good afternoon and probably good evening to some of you. Welcome to the Sephardic Zoom baking classes in memory of Katherine Scharhon Aleha Hashalom. We are here today to do spinach and cheese fritada with our wonderful chef, Sharon Babani. And we're very, very honored to have Sharon. She's well loved in our community and well respected as a tremendous baker of Sephardic foods. And I'm going to pass it on to her to introduce today's program. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Rabbi. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sharon Babani. My maiden name was Grinspan, so I was not born Sephardic. I came to Sephardic Bikur Cholim when I was 15 years old. So, Rabbi, if I've been here 51 years, does that count as a convert? Official convert? Anyway, I came to SBH with I wasn't raised Orthodox, but I came to SBH with my best friend in high school and started coming to services and attending classes with Rabbi Maimon. And then I met my husband. I was 15 years old when I met my husband, and we had our first date. And we got married 3 years later. I was 18 when we got married. So I didn't have much experience in the kitchen, except that I watched my mom a lot. I wasn't hands-on, but I was in the kitchen a lot. And I've always loved cooking. And so I just dove right in, you know, I had this our first Ladies Auxiliary cookbook, and that was my little Bible, and I used it, and you can see it's very well worn, and a lot of us have those books and we share our recipes. Anyway, my mother-in-law, who is one of the Sharon sisters who are very well known in our community, she taught me a lot also, and her sisters taught me a lot, and I've been learning all these years. I just keep learning, that's all. Anyway, I'm gonna make two dishes today. I'm gonna make a spinach fritada, which is spinach and cheese, and then I'm gonna make, after I'm done with that one, then I'll make what's called a cheese fritada. And it's kind of like a cheese souffle. And I don't know if it was very clear from that flyer, but it's two different dishes that I'm gonna make. So I'm gonna start with eggs. And what I like to do is I get all my liquid ingredients first, and then I chop my spinach and add the spinach on top and then mix it all together. So the first thing I'm going to do is preheat my oven and my pan at the same time. So I have a Pyrex pan, and I'm just gonna put a nice amount of oil in the pan and put it in the oven to preheat. And I'd say it's about a good 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm gonna just roll it around here. Put it in the oven and set it to 400. And now we'll get to work. So I already cut put my eggs in the bowl, and I use a nice big bowl because fresh spinach takes up a lot of space. If you're going to use frozen spinach, it doesn't take up quite so much room. You don't need quite as big a bowl. So just beat eggs, 4 eggs, beat them nicely. And I do a nice big full cup of cottage cheese. I don't measure, so when I gave the recipe, it was kind of approximate. Usually it's just kind of like a half a container here of cottage cheese. This one I had already opened, so I'm just gonna scoop a good amount in there. This kind of makes it nice and creamy. And then I add salt, teaspoon of salt.
Sharon, do you use full fat cottage cheese?
This is fat-free cottage cheese, but you can use whatever one that you like. I will tell you though that the ones that have fat in them make it very rich and creamy, and you can definitely use that. But I don't think I've ever used full fat cottage cheese. I've just never eaten full fat cottage cheese. Anyway, and then, so for my binder, I started using oatmeal, when I started using fresh spinach. So,
Well, sorry, one more. What type of oil do you use?
oh, just vegetable oil, canola oil, any light color oil. So when I first started making this recipe, I used frozen spinach. You know, I work full time, my husband worked full time, and it was easy. You know, you just thaw your spinach and it's easy to go. And I have show and tell to show you. These are my 2 recipe cards that I typed up in 1972, and you can see they're pretty yellow now. But I have made these 2 items for Shabbat for over 40 years. And my kids had it we had it every Shabbat for lunch. And my husband was also a very good cook, and he liked to cook, and he would pull out those recipe cards, and sometimes he would make these 2 items also. So it's a very special dish in our house. My boys love anything spinach and cheese. My older son said that his last meal would be bulemas. So, so I got that in there, and then the cheese. So I put in there, I don't know what I put in, 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. You can use whatever cheese you want. I have some Parmesan here. I'm going to put about 1/4 cup. And I'm going to use up some, I have some feta cheese, and I'm going to put some feta. So this is the, if you're going to use a strong cheese like Parmesan, you don't need as much, but if you're going to use a mild cheese, more like a cheddar, you could use a little bit more. So I'm just going to break up this feta and throw a little feta in there also. But I think if you're going to use shredded cheeses, you want to have about 1 cup's worth of cheese going in, otherwise about 1/2 cup of cheese with the strong cheese. So I'm just squishing it. And as you can see, I put a glove on my left hand because when I chop spinach, fresh spinach, I wear a glove because it sometimes can stain my fingernails, and I just polish my nails so I don't want to get them all stained. That's my little idiosyncrasy. As people know, I love my nails and I polish my nails. Okay, so that's good. And just kind of mix that up. And now I'm going to start on my spinach. I should have my hands here. So when I do spinach, I buy this big bag from Costco. And I made one last night, so I can show you a finished product. And so I used 1/2, and then what I do is I put a paper towel in the bag just to absorb any moisture so it doesn't get wet. All right, let me get started here. Sharon's going to move the camera down so you can see how I chop spinach. So I just take a big handful, just kind of squish it. Keep my fingers out of the way so I don't chop off a finger. I have cut a nail off before many times, so I've learned from experience. So first I just chop this way. Helps to have a nice sharp knife. And then I go this way. And I leave the stems on. I don't take the stems off. For this dish, you don't need to, because they just kind of cook down, especially if I can get them into a nice small size. So I just keep chopping. Probably have to do about 4 different loads to get all the spinach chopped. And then let me take this out. I don't need that in there. Just keep dumping the spinach. And I use this nice big bowl because fresh spinach takes up a lot of room. And usually it'll just reach to the top of the bowl, and that's when I know that I'm done. But today, I'm just going to use the second 1/2 of the bag, so when the spinach is gone, I'll know.
Sharon, I just want to let you know you got 50 friends on the call.
Nice, thank you, everybody. Is anybody cooking along with me?
I know that the Rubisa's in the kitchen cooking along, and I
All
can
right.
hear her computer as well. So
Okay.
I know definitely one.
Okay.
I know that I'm having spinach fritada for lunch, and I'm looking
We
forward.
are going to be having it for lunch this week too, and special occasion. My niece Florence from Florida is coming into town, so these will be my special gifts for Florence. We'll have special Sephardic delicacies. I should also add, back in the day when I started going to SBH for Shabbat services on Saturday, I went with my friend Lisa Roberts, who a lot of you know, and her mother Fanny, I think, was one of the best cooks in the whole world. She was a Sephardic cook, bar none, and that was my first exposure to Sephardic cooking. It wasn't with my in-laws. It was with Fanny Roberts, and oh my God, I fell in love with, well, my kids make fun of me. I love soutlatch, which is rice pudding. And my younger son, David, he used to make fun of me because, well, he couldn't really say soutlatch. He used to call it souplach. Anyway, it was a great little story. And she would make oatmeal, which is celery root. And the funny story is that I love oatmeal, and it's cooked in like a lemon sauce. And the thing is that I cannot stand fresh celery. I do not like it. People know that. If it's in a salad or anything, I just will not eat it, pick it out. But I love oatmeal. So there's no accounting for personal taste. It's just so weird how that happens. But anyway, I have fond memories of lunch, Shabbat lunch at the Roberts house. That was my real first exposure to Sephardic cooking. Anyway, that was a great story. Anybody else have any questions?
Can you just recap the steps for those people who came in late?
Oh, yeah. So the first thing we do is oil the pan and put it in the oven to preheat your oven at 400 degrees. And then by the time that's preheated, you get everything else ready. So I start with the eggs, cottage cheese, regular cheese, oatmeal, and salt. And if you don't want to use oatmeal, you don't have to. I, in the olden days, would use just bread or hollow leftover, any kind of bread from the freezer that I want to get rid of. You just soak it a little bit to soften it and add it in.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, why you don't use matzah meal, or is it because it's low gluten?
No, Rabbi, I started with the oatmeal, I think. I don't remember why, but I think it started when I started using fresh spinach. You know, it has a high moisture, a lot more moisture in it. And I found that the oatmeal really absorbed that moisture, and it gave it a really nice texture to spinach. And I don't know how I came up with the idea to do oatmeal. I really don't remember how, but ever since
That was the question I got from people. Ooh, oatmeal. Why not matzah meal or potato?
So for many years, I just use bread. And of course, for Pesach, when I make this, I just use farfel. And you just soak it a little bit and add it in. So yeah, but this is my little trick of the trade. And people always ask, wow, how do you get it so soft and fluffy, blah, blah, blah. So that's my secret, is the oatmeal, and it just disappears. It just makes a nice soft texture. This is kind of a soft, fluffy spinach fritada, and some people call it Quajado. So maybe it's the same thing as a Quajado. So my in-laws, my father-in-law is from Turkey. My mother-in-law, her family was from Rhodes. And so they would usually call things Quajado, but she called it fritada. So that's the way
Can you talk a little bit about that, the difference between a Quajado and a fritada? Because, I mean, I've been getting back and forth from lots of different chefs, if it's the same or slightly nuanced. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I'm not an expert, so for me, Quajado and fritada, for these two items that I'm making, are interchangeable words. Like a frittata you can make is usually an egg dish with vegetables and stuff, and you just bake it. And so that's, I guess, kind of how it came up with frittata. But sometimes I'll just say Quajado, and that way people aren't confused. And that way they know exactly what I'm talking about. But my mother-in-law was, she was a really good cook. She was also very careful and always used a recipe. Even if it was a recipe that she knew by heart, she always pulled out the recipe, which I admire because I think I know something and then I leave an ingredient out. So she taught me good things. And her sisters, she has a sister, Auntie Ray Barrow. And last week, Nicole, well, 2 weeks ago, Nicole was, when she made bulemas, she talked about how Auntie Ray taught her and Andrew how to make bulemas. Well, I got that same lesson, how to make bulemas. And of course, I've changed it over the years to make it easier for me. I mean, I worked for 40 years full time, so I had little shortcuts that I used over the years, and one of which was that I never stemmed my spinach like she did. And then I didn't coil them like she did, but she taught me exactly how to do the mixture and how to cut the spinach and how to fold them and roll them. And then of course, I learned a lot at SBH, cooking for the bazaar. So when I first got married in 1972, we didn't have a very big kitchen. And the ladies, the old timers, they wouldn't let me do very much because I was very inexperienced and they were very precise. So I was on spinach washing duty. It was not fun because we didn't have these bags of pre-washed spinach back in the day. They were spinach that came in bunches with big stems on them. You had to wash it 3 times. It's so muddy and dirty.
I love it how many people began as spinach washers. I think virtually everyone on here began as a spinach washer.
Yeah. I mean, listening to everyone's stories about it, I just chuckle along and say, yep, that was me. It was me, Donna Baruch. Oh my God. Anyway, I started washing spinach and I just worked my way up. And for the last many years, well, I've been retired for 8 years now. So that was one of my joys of retirement, was being able to go cook with the ladies and gentlemen for the bazaar. I just love that camaraderie, and that's kind of what I'm getting from these Zoom cooking classes, is that camaraderie, and you just make wonderful friendships. Man, I got so attached to everybody. Al Cordova, I'm just so upset with his passing. Of course, Auntie Kay, who we're cooking, her name is on these, cooking classes. So that was my husband's cousin. Her name is Katherine, but we called her Auntie Kay. And she was a great mentor to me also. She was so sweet. When I was cooking for my son's bar mitzvah, my first son, we did all the cooking ourselves. We didn't have caterers back then to do it. And she was the mashgiach in the kitchen, and she was in there working and helping and advising. And it was, anyway, you get some great friendships out of this. And the bazaar is very, very special to me. I just have wonderful memories. Wonderful people. Anyway, so I've mixed it all up. It's all mixed. I'm just waiting for my stove to preheat. We're at 396, so it's going to be right now. So I'm going to take this glove off. There's the belt. All right, we got to be careful. It's going to be hot oil coming out. I want you to hear the sizzle. That oil is hot. And it gives a nice crispy bottom. Okay. Then you just kind of move it around and press it. I'm using, this is a brand new pan I just bought. I should need to say special blessing. Oh, Sharon's bringing the camera over. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of cheese over the top, and that's what gives it its golden, beautiful top layer. Okay, I'm gonna go over here and get some cheese. So I like to use Parmesan. I just sprinkle a little bit at a time over the top. I just use a spoon. You can use your hands, however you want. You can put as more if you want. You can put shredded cheese on the top. It'll look a little different. The one I'll show you that I made last night, I put some Parmesan and some shredded mozzarella over the top, and it browns beautifully. Okay, let's go back on. Timer.
Sharon, just a few questions.
Yes.
What were you mixing in with the spinach there?
What was I mixing in? The spinach?
Yeah.
At this, when?
What was in the bowl?
Oh, what was in the bowl? That was all the cheese and the eggs and oatmeal.
The soft, okay, the moisture. And what size pan was that?
That was a 9x13 Pyrex.
Okay, and could you use a pie tin for that?
You can use whatever size pan that you have. Just know that the cooking time might be a little different. Like when I was doing frozen spinach, making frozen spinach, you don't get quite the volume, and so I was using this pan, which is a 7x11, and this is the pan that I'm going to use for the cheese frittata. I don't use a 9x13 for this recipe. It makes it too thin. So.
And can you talk a little bit about if you did frozen spinach, would it be any different?
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up. I was just going to say that if you're going to do frozen spinach, you do not need to drain it. You don't need to squeeze it dry. You want all that moisture in there. And then the oatmeal will help absorb that moisture.
And just like most of these dishes, just confirming, you can freeze this after you make it, right?
Definitely, yes. I like to make mine in a Pyrex pan and then put it in a freezer into a foil pan to freeze it. I don't like to cook my food in foil. I know a lot of people do, but it just turns out better from a Pyrex. Foil just doesn't conduct the same heat the same way. I have another great story about the spinach and the frittata and my kids loving it so much. My son, my older son, who just finally moved out of the house a couple years ago, he's been wanting to make spinach frittata because he misses it. And so I gave him the recipe, and I ended up handing down my favorite Pyrex pan that I always made spinach in for him. And so now he's using it to make his spinach frittata. And that's why I had to buy another new pan. I like to have two pans because I use those Pyrex pans a lot for baking. Okay.
Do you have that spinach, the one you made, to show us?
Yes, I'll show it to you. So this is what it looked like. Can you see the lights very good?
Oh, it looks delicious.
Yeah, and so you can see it's pretty golden. That's from the mozzarella and the I did both Parmesan and mozzarella. It's, yeah, and they freeze beautifully and reheat beautifully. Yeah, my kids love anything spinach and cheese. Okay.
One more question. How long do you cook it for again?
I set my timer for 40 minutes. You know, everyone's oven is different, so you might want to check it a little sooner just to see. I also have, my stove has two ovens. I have a little one on top and a bigger one on the bottom. So the top oven, it just cooks faster because the elements are so close. And that's what I like to use that oven best for my frittatas. but it might take 45 minutes. I think on my original recipe card, it said to bake for an hour. So the apartment we lived in, the stove, it took an hour, that apartment, because that's when I typed up this card. Anyway, any other questions on spinach before we go on to cheese? No?
I was just giving a big smile because Sharon was just showing me hers before, just about before it goes in the oven. Looks very good. So,
Rabbi, you're going to have a good lunch this week. Okay, so let's try it and start with the cheese frittata. So again, I'm going to oil my pan and put it in the oven to preheat so it's nice and hot. And again, I don't know, I think I said on the recipe a tablespoon of oil, but I think I use more. I don't measure. You just want a nice, you don't want to be chintzy on the oil. Okay, I'm going to put it in my other oven now, preheat. And there again, I'm going to do 400. Okay, so this one goes very quickly. And it's very easy, and I have changed the recipe over the years. Originally, this recipe started, it had a cup of milk and a cup of water. And I don't know what happened, but I'll get a dish here for my egg. I must not have had milk or something, and so I just used water, and it turned out so great, I continued to do just water. So you can also do milk if you want, half milk, not whole milk. Half water, half milk. So this recipe only uses 2 eggs. And you can use any size eggs. These are large eggs. Usually, sometimes I have extra large eggs from Costco, which are huge. So, okay. Oh geez, I got a piece of shell in there. So you just whip these. These you want to whip really nicely. And, I'm going to do 2 cups of water, and then so the olden recipe. This recipe is really like a souffle. You put it in the hot oven and it really poofs up on the sides a lot. It really poofs up and then it will come down a little bit. But it's really easy. My son, the younger son, who's a chef, he improvises on this cheese frittata. He likes to make it with, he adds cottage cheese to his, and he adds jalapeno, pickled jalapenos. It's really flexible. You can do whatever you want, but this is the base recipe. So now I'm going to do 1 cup of flour and mix it around. You don't really want a lot of lumps. It takes a few minutes just to get it nice and smooth. Is Sharona making cheese frittata also, Rabbi? Do you know?
I think she's watching on this one.
Okay.
She said 1 frittata is enough for me.
Well, I used to whip them up 2 at a time. I went one after the other, and this was something I could whip up on Friday afternoon very quickly. When we were first married, my husband would make these on Friday because his hours were different than mine, and I came home late on Fridays from work. So it's a very easy recipe. Anyone can make it. You don't have to be too experienced. My sister-in-law, Vicky, she calls me the frittata queen. I have given her this recipe for cheese frittata, and I'm adding 1 teaspoon of salt. She said hers never turned out like mine. So Vicky, I hope you're watching and you can see exactly what I'm doing. I think she's an amazing cook, so it's always delicious, but she thinks it's not the same as mine.
You let me know how we can get Vicky on here too.
I would love to get Vicky on here. Maybe when she retires, I don't know. She's pretty busy. But she would give a master class. She has taught me so much. Oh man, she's really taught me a lot. She taught me, first of all, bulemas. She has a secret to bulemas that I have followed, and salmon con huevo limon that we make for Rosh Hashanah or Pesach. She has a foolproof method, and she typed it all up for me. So now I've become an expert at that too. I can make it. And that's what I love about sharing these recipes. Well, I love sharing, you know, and people will say, well, mine doesn't turn out the same, but that's okay. You make it your own. Okay, now comes cheese. So the original recipe calls for a cup of shredded cheddar cheese or parmesan, whatever. I think a whole cup of parmesan is way too much. It makes it way too heavy and not fluffy. And here again, you can use whatever cheese you want. I'm going to put some parmesan, and I'm going to put some feta and some mozzarella just because I want to use it up. I already have the packages opened, and it's flexible. It's really flexible. You can do whatever you want. That's what I love about these. My parmesan. It's almost time to order more parmesan. Okay, and so I'm adding about a 1/4 cup of parmesan. Mix it in. You know, it's really interesting. My sister, Lisa Almo, married a nice Sephardic boy also, Larry Almo, the Gabai of our synagogue. And my brother married a nice Sephardic girl, Jamie Piha. So I don't like to call it a mixed marriage. I just don't like that. But I just think it's very funny how we all gravitated towards a Sephardic partner. Okay, that's in, and I'm gonna put in a little bit of feta. I have to admit, I've never done this before with the feta, but I don't think you can go wrong with feta, too much cheese in here. The feta is a nice, it's not heavy, but it gives it lots of flavor. And this is the Israeli feta, I think. I can't remember, I bought it. So my favorite feta cheese is the Pastures of Eden. I just love that feta. And for a long time, Trader Joe's carried it and it was a really good price. And then they weren't able to get it in quantities. So now they have another Israeli feta that they carry. But this, I think, is Tenuva feta that I bought the last time I was in Florida, and I went to Costco with Florence, my niece. They have kosher food in their Costco's. We don't get the kosher stuff here, but I bought several packages and I froze it. So that's the other good thing. Feta freezes really well. Okay, a little bit more. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of mozzarella just to make it a nice and stringy beauty. Extra for Florence. All right. I'm going to switch over to my spatula. Rabbi, can you tell if there's anyone on how many people are on, if there's anyone I know, or if I need to shout out to anybody.
There's lots of people you know, lots of your nieces and
Oh,
your sisters-in-law and cousins.
nice.
We got over 60 people on here.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the moral support. I was a little bit nervous, even though this is second nature to me. I'm not used to really talking like this. And
There's a question about, do you ever use Kashkaval cheese or Beecher's?
well, I have never used Kashkaval because that's a cheese that we don't normally get here. So in Seattle, and you can use whatever cheese you want. If you have Kashkaval, go ahead and I don't know exactly how much you would use. I think Kashkaval is a pretty strong cheese, right? Kind of like Parmesan. I don't know. I've never had it. We've never had it here. I like back in the day. I've always used just cheddar, shredded cheddar, but I was lazy and I didn't feel like shredding it today. So.
Sharon, do you mind recapping the cheeses that you're using and how much altogether?
Okay, so I used about a quarter cup of Parmesan, shredded Parmesan, and I used about, I don't know, a few tablespoons of feta and a few tablespoons of mozzarella. So usually about like a half a cup total of cheese, unless it's cheddar, and then it's about a cup.
Coming out of there, is that?
Yeah, it's okay for steam to come out. It's venting. You know, it looks scary, huh? Yeah, my stove is venting all that moisture out, so there's steam coming out. Alrighty, let me break up this feta a little bit. No more questions, huh? Let me see if I have any more fun stories to tell. I haven't been to synagogue in 8 months, and yesterday was my first time back, and I was so happy to go and be there.
It was great seeing you. Tell me, what did you miss the most?
Well, I just love praying, and Rabbi, I can't tell you, I just loved it all so much. And I have to say, I really appreciated that it was quiet and you could really pray in peace.
It's definitely one of the added bonuses we weren't expecting. You definitely have more people going to pray, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it so much. I went for high holidays and I sat outside, which I really appreciated being able to do that, at least. It's not the same as being inside. SBH is very special to me. Obviously, I've been there since I was 15 years old, and Rabbi Maimon, everyone is so special to me. So my husband comes from a huge Sephardic family. His mom was a Sharon. She was one of 12 children. And my husband, his family, he was one of 5 siblings. Compared to my family, I have 1 sister and 1 brother. My mom was an only child, and my father had 1 sister who had 1 daughter. So I grew up with 1 cousin who was kind of like our older sister. And then I married into this family with, 100 cousins? I don't know, I lost track.
I think it was like 60 first cousins.
60
But when you add the second cousins in there too, it was huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
I have a couple of questions now on the menu, on the recipes.
Okay.
Can you add mushrooms to this?
To the cheese?
Yeah. Or the spinach.
Go right ahead. It might change the texture because mushrooms are very high in moisture.
Yeah. And for the spinach one, do you use a large curd or a small curd cottage cheese?
Whatever you like.
And for the cheese, the one, should this be a thin mixture?
For the cheese fritada, yes, it'll be a thin mixture, but it'll poof up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love there's so much opportunity for variation on here. It doesn't have to be one thing. I like that.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, my son puts pickled jalapenos in his, and it really kind of gives it a Mexican kind of flair to it. And then, and it refrigerates and you can freeze it, and it's easy to pack for lunches, and Both, either one, they're good. My recipe for the spinach, I don't know if any of you are on Weight Watchers, but I figured out my points, and it's one, I slice it in my 9 by 13, I cut it into 20 pieces, and it's 1 point a piece. This cheese frittata is 2 points a piece. For those who want to know, if you're interested.
Now I know why Sharon made the spinach one, not the cheese one.
Well, the cheese one is not bad, but it doesn't have vegetables in it, so.
Yeah.
The spinach is pretty healthy.
She's looking out for me. I like that.
Yeah, it's you can't go wrong with spinach. It's a good thing. And what I like about it is it's you still get that spinach and cheesy and oily vibe, but without the dough from like a bulema or like a bureka. I've enjoyed these cooking shows so much, and I cooked along with biscochos, and I cooked along with meat filas, and I did baklava. One of the very first things I did make, Marlene, you might be interested in this, was I made yaprakis for the first time, and I used the Ladies Auxiliary cookbook, and it's not really, the recipes were not really accurate. Anyway, a few things were left out. I just learned by doing, I just learned that it needed more lemon, need to cook longer, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, my oven just beeped. Hey, sizzle. You can see it starting to pop up. Oh my gosh, I just got a text from Florence in Florida. She's cooking with her kids. Oh, Florence. That makes me so happy. Okay. Oh. Alrighty, so I'm gonna set this timer on my watch since I don't. So there again, I'm gonna do for 40 minutes. I don't know, I just find it. But everyone's oven is different. So start checking it at 35 maybe. Maybe sometimes it needs to go longer. So that is my story on these two items that have become my signature dishes, basically, is because I made them every week for 50 years. So anybody else have any questions or sharing anything that they like to do? Oh, Lillian's texting me. Oh my God. This was so much fun. Rabbi, thank you so much for being the moderator.
This is my absolute pleasure. I love how watching you, Sharon. You're so calm in the kitchen, and you got everything under control. It's wonderful.
Well, the kitchen is my favorite place to be. I love cooking. I'm not a big baker. I'm not very good. I can do bizcochos. I learned a lot from Ellie Varon. I learned a lot from Terry Azos. I've learned a lot from everybody, and when I was working, if I had a day off from work, I was in the kitchen. I was cooking. I was making some barekas to put in the freezer, or bulemas. The other thing one of my very favorite things is cheese buikus. Oh, for Leah. So Leah Gladstein did cheese buikus first. That was the first one. And so her mother and my husband's mother were sisters. So we have a lot of the same stories to tell, except that she was raised with that. So she was so great. I've just enjoyed these so much, and everyone is so good. And
Well,
This is like,
Sharon, if I can indulge you while you're still on here, I want to encourage you to come and do another one because you've been wonderful.
I would. I don't know. Is there anything left to make?
Well, my mom is a big meat fan, and she's been asking about who can do pastelis.
Oh, I can do pastels for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, she'll be very excited because my mom said when they do pastels, then I'm going to come on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do pastels. I mean, I don't do that rapugo very well, but no one cares in my family.
Oh, there we go. Well, we're
I
just wrapping up now. Do you have any last comments before we stop for today?
no, Jack Shalom, I see you on there. And are you wearing a Seahawk apron too, or a shirt? Yay! It's a Seahawks game going on right now.
Yeah. Well, I want to wish everyone a wonderful, happy Sunday. Go Hawks, and see you all very soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you, guys.